Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside Audio, Video, and Lighting. And I'm here today with a really, really good friend that I've known a long time, Chad Kirkpatrick.
Hey man, how
What's
you
up,
doing?
Chad? How's it going, man?
Living the dream.
Living the
Hanging
dream.
out with you.
Nice. It's always good to have you. I know we can talk forever, and we've actually been talking for a good 40 minutes before we even recorded this. But, we're going to talk about some certain things today, something I felt that was important that we need to get out there. And one of the first things is the real reason audio problems exist in the church before you even turn anything on.
Well, man, there's so many things. I would say, as someone who, like, brief introduction to what I do these days, I go around and help different churches, in our area and beyond. And I get to see a lot of like common issues that churches are dealing with. Usually one of the first ones is not like budgeting properly for like acoustic treatment in the room. And then there's just a lot of other things, like depending on how you want to look at this with technology or with interpersonal relationships, but like there's a lot of like communication issues that can happen. But like when I just walk into a room cold, usually the first thing I notice is just like, okay, there's no carpet, there's no acoustic paneling, it sounds bad before you even listen to the sound system. Like speakers aren't going to make that any better. In fact, they're going to make it worse. So like having like a properly treated room, and you don't have to spend a lot of money, but like spending money in the right places really will help you get in the right spot to then train your people to make good sound happen. So that's usually my experience with that.
And this question can go on different levels depending on the context, because you're 100% right, man. Most people overlook the acoustic treatments in the room, and they have, this really expensive rig, and it doesn't sound that great.
Yeah.
And then they're wondering why, and they think it's because of that. Well, no, it's because of your room.
Yeah.
But also, audio problems exist from bad communication on a staffing level, or like one thing that came to my mind when you were talking is that they don't have any type of volunteers. Nobody's learning how to do audio. And maybe that's because, and it depends on the size of the church, but obviously if you don't have an audio engineer on staff or someone that's really knowledgeable, you're gonna hurt from the beginning. So having someone like Chad and I come in and set you up to where you can be volunteer friendly and also give them training. So,
well, and I think it's so important. I know some churches, depending on basically how much money the church has, some churches will like have professionals come in and mix exclusively, and then they won't pour into their volunteer base. And then the problem with that is like, well, those guys generally are going to go where it's going to feed their family the best. So there might be a time where they're not available because they're filling in somewhere else or whatever. Like you really want to build up your volunteer team the best that you can. And sometimes that means that there'll be a temporary drop in quality because you don't have that paid guy who's a professional, has been doing it for years. So it might drop down in quality a little bit while you're training up your volunteers, but then you're going to end up with a better, consistent volunteer team all the time, and then eventually you'll have a better team. And I know for me personally, the way I got into audio was that our sound guy that we had in my church a long time ago didn't show up one day, and I was just sitting in the booth, and no one told me I was supposed to be learning anything.
Well, you were a bass player though at the time.
Well, at that time I wasn't either.
Oh wow.
I was just in youth group sitting with my friend who's running sound.
Okay, way back.
So this is when I was like 12, and but the head deacon walks up to me and goes, "Your friend's family left the church. You're running sound now," and just walks off. And so I got thrown into it. Now that wasn't the best way for it to happen, but it's what happened. But some of these churches now, like we provide audio engineers on a weekly basis at churches, and our whole philosophy is we want to teach a man to fish, not sell a man a fish. And so like some churches want to like just say, "Hey, Ascension, come in and mix this for us." And it's like, well, I'd rather train your volunteers so that when we can't be there, you're going to have someone. Because I think about me and my situation. If my church back then had just said, "Hey, we're just going to hire a guy," and I never got involved with it, I wouldn't have the career that I have today. So like I think it's good to have professionals involved to like, spot check you every few weeks and that kind of stuff. But training your volunteers, people that are committed to your church, is always going to be the best option in the long run for you, your church, and for them.
You mentioned Ascension Worship, and that's a good segue into like teams and how teams communicate. Obviously, there's different teams within church. One of the teams, or two of the teams that kind of don't see eye to eye all the time is production teams and platform teams.
Yeah.
How do you think why do you think they misunderstand each other so much?
Well, so it's interesting you say that. I remember years ago in a different band that I was a part of, we were serving at a church, and there was like real like heads knocking between those two teams, just like you said. And some of it, looking back on it, was some technological issues. But one thing that we did that ended up helping a lot was we actually did a day where we took the people that worked in the tech booth and put them on stage, and the people who worked on stage and put them on the tech booth. And this is before in-ears were a thing. So we have the people on stage who normally work in the tech booth listen to the microphone and be like, oh, I really can't hear myself in the monitors. So they're asking for more. And whereas the people in the booth now who are normally on stage are like, oh man, it's so loud out here. Like I'm trying to turn things down. And so like they finally got to see like, oh, that's what it's like to be in both of these positions. And it like the light bulbs went off on both sides of things. And so there's a lot to that, but I think a lot of it's understanding. I know for me, one thing that helps me a lot is that I'm primarily a sound guy now, but I was a bass player for most of my musical life. And so understanding what it's like to have a bad mix, when you're on stage and how that can affect your performance helps me as a sound person now. And then, as a sound person, like understanding, what it's like when your instrument's not being heard properly or, those kinds of things. Like it just really helps to glue those two things together. So I think as much as you can, trying to cross train will help with that as well.
Before I forget, and I had the last bass player do this too, can you give us your bass face?
Oh,
nice.
Yeah. That's when you're looking the drummer dead in the eyes.
Yeah.
Really having a connection,
You can really tell that he's really into it at that point when he has that face on him.
It actually, so it's funny you mentioned that because here's my actual bass face is like I'm like
you're like, what in the world's going on?
I look like I'm mad at everybody. And so like one thing I used to do, you remember Gumby?
Yeah.
So my parents bought me a Cracker Barrel like Gumby figurine like years ago.
Yeah.
And so I used to put Gumby on my pedal board because it reminded me to smile and be flexible because that's, Gumby. And so every time I would look down because like
I'm Gumby, damn it.
Exactly. Whenever I would look at my pedal board because I'm like looking down because I'm like, socially awkward and not looking at the crowd.
Yeah.
I would look down, I would see Gumby smiling and being flexible, and it would remind me to look up at the crowd. And sometimes I would take my glasses off so I couldn't see their faces, but I would just like smile into the abyss. But it creates a connection, which is actually very important, especially in the church world, because like I'm so much more willing to sing out and worship if I look on stage and there's like a 50-year-old dad on stage,
just going
like
at it,
singing, and like he might sound terrible, but he's like putting the joyful noise out there and looking my direction. It's like when you're in school and like you sit up in your seat when the teacher looks your direction, but if they're just looking at the chalkboard the whole time, you're not connected with them. So like it's very, very important.
It's the same thing as if you're in a studio and you can't see the artist singing and they can't see the engineer. It's that same connection. It's the same connection that a bass player has with the drummer.
Yeah.
It's the same connection a keyboard player has with the vocalist.
So here's one of my more controversial takes that
let's hear it.
Maybe shouldn't be controversial, but I think it is.
It's church
It is actually that I am firmly against music stands on stage.
Ooh.
And the reason why is it's kind of like if I'm having a conversation with you the whole time and I'm not looking you in the eye, like it doesn't feel like I'm actually having a conversation with you. That's what's happening. You're conversing with the crowd. We're worshiping together, and that doesn't feel authentic if I'm looking down the whole time, and also too, people, lose place in the song, that kind of thing. These songs are designed to be easy to memorize and play. And so it takes a little bit of work, obviously, but memorizing your songs and looking out at your audience makes such a big difference. So.
I've been recognized as church as the sound guy that sings.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of us that do. And it's kind of like the music has hit my spirit. I can't help it. I can't help but praise. So I sing. Sometimes I'm not in the mood.
One arm up in the air while you mix with the other.
Sometimes I'm not in the mood either, so I don't sing. But
sometimes I don't want this to sound bad, but sometimes I will not fake sing, but I'll sing without actually singing. I'll move my mouth. Well, because one, like I want to sing, but also I know the practicalities of I can't hear the mix properly if I'm hearing me singing.
Well, there is that,
but also too, same deal. Like if the band looks back and sees me into it, it makes them feel more confident that things are going really well out in the room, and that actually translates to how they perform. So what I don't want to do is, and like I have to fight this every day, is like look crazy because I'm trying to fix a million issues at once, and
there's a problem.
It's not sounding the way I want. Like I'm, kind of fake it till you make it kind of deal.
I take pride just standing back and standing there, not touching anything.
Yeah, I can see that. At the same time, if someone, depending on their prior experiences with other sound people, they can see that as like, oh, he's not actually involved.
No, because I already know the mix is as good as I can get it, and they're happy. So,
well, and I'm saying that's not a you issue; that's a them issue.
Yeah, that is.
You see what I'm saying? So, but the you issue is understanding how they perceive you. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that definitely leads into my next question for you, and that. What makes production teams feel blamed for problems that aren't fully in their control?
Sorry,
that's a big one. What makes production teams feel blamed for problems they aren't fully in control over?
Oh, man.
I mean, it has to be gear, right? Like, hey, we haven't updated this gear in like 15 years.
There's so many things. So back to what we were talking about earlier, like the room has such a huge impact on that. Like, there are things that you can get away with in a good environment, with a good room, with good speakers and good gear, that like as soon as you're in a bad room, like I find that I have to make so much more when I'm in a bad room than when I'm like in a good room, because like it's just weird reflections going on, weird little peaks of mid-range, like that kind of thing. Also the musicians, like sometimes they just don't realize like less is more, and so maybe they're overplaying, and so now I'm having to constantly like turn things up and down and try to EQ out weird things that they're doing, and like a lot of keyboards sometimes because they can sound like anything, they'll put weird sounds in their keys, and I'm having to make up for that because like he was at this volume then, now he's here and he's a lot brighter, and like there's so many little things that as a sound guy, you have to try and balance all that and just do the best with what you got in that moment.
Another thing is that the churches that get into the practice or the culture of not having a sound check, and then the pastor's availability for that is not there, and then that pastor gets upset when the sound check, when it doesn't sound that well, when if he would just show up for sound check, he would be reassured that it's already sounding well when he walks on stage.
Yeah.
So that's another angle to where you may be blamed for something and you didn't have full control over it. Like, well, I was here early to plan. How about you? So what tells...
I get a lot with bands too, where they'll rehearse, but their rehearsal is we just start playing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it'd be good if we just do a really quick line check. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. But like, I see this a lot, like acoustic guitar. You can tell when an acoustic guitar battery is starting to go dead when you hear it by itself, because it'll start to sound a little bit distorted.
Yeah.
But when everybody just starts playing, you may not notice that at first, and then it's like later on, it's like something's a little bit weird. But or if there's like a bad cable on like a tom mic, little things like that like are not obvious in the full mix, at least not at the beginning, but get worse over time. If you just did a really quick sound check, you'd be able to figure that out and fix it.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
So simple. What tells you within 5 minutes whether a church has a healthy production culture or not? That's a big question right there.
Ooh. Well,
within 5 minutes.
I mean, you can usually look around at people's faces and like if they're doing
asleep.
One of these, which to be fair, a lot of production guys do because they're just extreme introverts, But I don't know, like how excited people are to be there, how rested people look. I'm really into boundaries, and like I've been in some churches where like you can just tell that guy's never had a break.
Yeah, tell me, what is a healthy boundary in your mind in church production?
Just taking time. Like, let me first say, I'll give you a quick story. So when I was in Bible college, I went as a bass player, but I also did sound during that time. Like I was doing like 50-50, but I went there as a bass player, and then one thing that was cool about that college was that they didn't let you serve on Sundays on platform until you'd been there for 6 months. So it gave you time to kind of get adjusted and also not get a big head, because that can definitely happen. And so I took a course. It was an elective of an elective, but in hindsight, and it's been like over 10 years since I've come back from college, I think that this should be something that everyone should have to learn, especially if you're involved in church and church leadership, or if you're leadership in any kind of other team. But it was a book called Boundaries. It's only like this thick. It's by Henry Cloud. You only really need to read the first like 3 chapters. But basically the first bit of it is just learning how to say no to certain things so that you can say yes to others. So what that looks like for us is like, okay, well, I've got a full-time job. I've served the past, 6 months or whatever. Like I'm starting to feel like tired and like I don't want to be here. Okay, well, you need to take a Sunday off here or there, and like schedule that into your time. So that's like on the individual level. As a leader, learning boundaries, like one, you have to respect, someone asks for time off, you help them get time off, that kind of thing. But then where it really becomes like next level leadership is imposing boundaries on other people. So like I see a lot of time in churches, there's a lot of like 20-something-year-olds that are like really gung-ho and going for it, which is great, but they haven't been kicked in the teeth by life yet. And so sometimes you have to look at them and be like, hey man, you haven't taken a break in 6 months. Like, I know that you'd like to be here and I like having you here, but you have to take next week off. And like, even that, if that means like maybe they're your best sound guy who's on rotation, it's like, okay, well, the level of our quality is going to drop a little bit for this week. But if he burned out and never came back, then it's going to drop a lot lower. So if I, to give him some breaks and train up other people, try to get everybody's level up and make sure that he's healthy, then everybody's going to be healthier in the long run. So like boundaries are just so incredibly important. And so many churches and other organizations, like they just want to get better and better and better. And they don't think about the people that they're burning out on the path to get there. And you can legitimately mess someone's life up if you don't give them breaks. So boundaries, I think, are probably the most important thing that aren't focused on enough.
Well, you are pastoring to the people.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes your volunteer and technical staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of switching gears here a little bit. Microphone technique and teachability. I thought this was another important thing that I see a lot of pastors and maybe not so many worship leaders, because they're not a worship leader for so long if they can't sing into the microphone correctly.
Well, I was actually talking to a church last night about this. Like, you want to get like up front and
why do you think they struggle with it so much?
Well, so to your point about worship leaders, I think especially if you're training up new worship leaders, and especially if they're not using in-ears, like if they're listening to the room, some people are so afraid to be heard in the house. Like they're being very bashful, which is a good thing. They're not, they don't have a big head yet, but they'll hear, oh, I can be heard in the house. And so they'll pull back.
They don't have that prima donna thing going on yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Give it time.
Prima donna.
Well, so they pull off the microphone or they sing soft. But then you as a sound guy are like, oh, I really like her voice. I want more. So you turn it up. And then she hears herself in the house again and she pulls further back and gets quieter. And it becomes this battle of, tug of war. Well, as we know as sound people, the quieter you are and the further the microphone is away from you, then the more other things are going to seep into that microphone when they gain it up or turn the volume up. And then you start getting feedback. You start hearing noise of like the drums and that kind of stuff. So, just like anything, signal to noise ratio, the more you can be up on the microphone and project loudly, the less everything else has to be there. And if they think that it's too loud in the house, you as a sound person have to be, kind of psychological with them and say, hey, you sound great. Let me control how it sounds out here, or ultimately we want to get people on in-ear monitors so that they can hear themselves at whatever volume they want, and then you as a front of house person can put them wherever you want.
Why do you think microphone coaching sometimes is taken personally?
Well,
is it an ego thing?
Yeah,
they're already the
sure.
prima donna. Yeah.
Well, people, I love the phrase, "It's a microphone, not a miracle." And so, like, I think some people like I love going to this sounds bad. I don't love going to funerals, but
science is science.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you're at a funeral or some sort of event where you have people that are publicly speaking that don't normally publicly speak, and they'll like take the microphone and they just hold it. They think that it's just a magical stick that if it's in your hand, you can be heard perfectly. And it's like, well, no, like you have to know, like it needs to be basically touching your lips or at least close to it to really get a good signal. But you can't know what you don't know, you know?
Well, you can see the microphone distance between Chad and I. I obviously have to speak a little bit louder to be heard. I'm comfortable with it being here. It still sounds good. I'm still within the polar pattern, but Chad is closer to the polar pattern. Why do two people use the same microphone and get completely different results? Point in
yeah,
hand. Yeah.
Depending on how they hold the microphone, their natural, tone of their voice versus the other person's voice,
good morning,
how loud they are,
everybody.
And then this also goes back to gain structure and how important gain structure is, because if you're using compression and gating and dynamic EQs and all that kind of stuff, like the level that the mic is picking up your voice is going to determine how those things interact. So trying to get consistent gain settings is going to be really important for that.
Well, plus when you get out on stage or out in front of the church, you should be like, "Hey, everybody, how's it going?" And some people just get up there,
mic.
Right? And then some people get up there like, "Good morning," and then you can barely hear them for a good 5-10 minutes, and then they get going.
Yeah. Now I always tell people, like, pretend like there is no microphone. I mean, obviously hold it in a good spot, but if they can project well, especially like it's summer right now, so there's like all these like VBS things going on and kids productions, like those kids need to pretend like there is no microphone and speak loudly, and then the microphone's just kind of giving it that little boost or going to your broadcast if you're broadcasting. But yeah, again, it's a microphone, not a miracle.
This is a big open question for you. Why can't engineers simply fix it at the console, Chad?
Physics.
That's a big question.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do, and we do have the best tools currently available, and it's better, but it'll never be as good as just proper mic placement.
Man, you can not say enough about proper mic placement and how it just makes everybody's life easier. All the way down to the listener listening to on your broadcast. Why can't I hear so-and-so? Like, well, so-and-so has his mic at his stomach. We can't fix it. It is what it is.
Yep.
That brings up audio emergencies and Sunday pressure. Two very good topics. I think from my angle, being someone that sells audio, video, and lighting gear, there's always those audio emergencies. And it mostly is because you didn't plan ahead of time. What actually counts as an audio emergency, though?
I mean, there's different levels of emergencies. So some people will freak out over, a microphone not working or something like that. And then I've seen systems where like the entire thing quits working, in the morning, or like it's even worse when it happens in the middle of the service. And one thing that I found interesting, if I can get a little spiritual for a moment here, some of the best worship services I've ever seen are when everything breaks and you realize like none of this is coming with us when we die. And so we can worship God without all this. And so I've seen some services where like literally every single thing breaks one after another. And finally we just give up and say, God, take it. And like those end up being the most freeing, amazing services. Now that said, if we can avoid that,
I mean, even things in life, I think so many people watch their kids' performance through their phone because they're recording it. That was one thing. My daughter had a dance performance this last weekend, and I didn't record it. I sat there and I watched it. Yeah, I lived in the moment. So it's kind of like the same, with what you're saying about preaching. Live in the moment. You can't replicate it, you're not going to ever see this again, but it was special and you remember that,
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, hey, the power went out.
Yeah.
It was like, man, he delivered such an amazing message and I didn't need any electronics to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that said, here's some practical things that I've seen that can help you in an emergency, because obviously we do want people to be able to hear the word that is being, spoken to them that morning. So I think it's always good to have a lo-fi solution that you might need last minute. And like probably the simplest version of that is having like a portable rig. So like some powered speakers on stands that if you absolutely had to, you could throw those up on stage and just plug a microphone directly into them. Yep. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be better than nothing. Like
you'll be audible.
Yeah. It'll be something that it'll band-aid you through until you can figure out what the real issue is. I think also being careful, leading up to that, not to over-engineer your sound system. I see a lot of sound teams now doing everything over Dante, and Dante is amazing, but if something happens to your network switch, you could lose everything. So I always like to have actual copper going from my soundboard to my amplifiers, so I can control that as much as possible. But yeah, so don't put yourself in a position where you're relying on one piece of gear for everything. That's just not wise. When you do have, a smaller emergency, so like, here's a good example. I was at church one time where something happened and the pastor's microphone didn't work. And he went to take the worship leader's microphone. It was a wired mic, and they had wrapped the cable around the mic stand like 10, 20 times. And and it was fine, but it was just the optics of like, he goes to take the microphone and then has to like do this in front of the crowd. And it took him like 30 seconds before he could actually use the microphone. And so it was just awkward. So all I had to say, that's not the issue. The issue is when a mistake like that happens, one thing that a lot of churches don't do, and this goes for teams outside church too, but is have a debrief session right after the service, and just talk about, this should be something you do even things, go right, but talk about the things that went well, the things that could be better, and then from a spiritual application, like how did you see God moving in the service? But I find that when you have an issue like that, like having, a quick debrief of like, hey, the microphone quit working. 1, why did it quit working? 2, what do we do? Like when something like that happens and you can't plan for it, how do you pivot quickly? And so like in that situation, like, okay, next time pastor's microphone dies, these 2 people are going to be responsible. One of them is going to hand him their microphone, and like just having a plan for that. And then simply 2, in that case, if you have wired microphones, don't do what I call candy caning the mic, where you just wrap it like crazy. Like you can do like 2 wraps if you just want to keep the cable from looking like it's hanging down, but like just little things like that gets it into their mind. It's not like hey, no one's in trouble. We just need to know next time this happens, how do we handle this better? And if you hit at that moment, it won't feel passive aggressive or weird, but if you wait a week and then talk about it, there's a different vibe to it.
You mentioned pastor's mic dying. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there are some safety, not safety. There are some things that you have to do to, when it happens.
Yeah.
But there are some preventative things that you could have done to prevent that from happening.
Uh-huh.
And it's simple, and not to pick on bass players, but the bass player that forgets his extra 9-volt battery, mm-hmm. or the sound tech that doesn't put new fresh batteries in there or make sure that the ones that they have are charged for that Sunday. Those are all accountability things that you as a professional or maybe just a volunteer have to think about, these contingency plans, so you don't interrupt worship. Like what if you can't go out and run and get a 9-volt battery? Now worship has no bass.
Uh-huh.
I know that doesn't
check. You would have found that out.
I know that doesn't like, oh my God, the bass player can't play. But
all the spirit, all just leaves the room.
It really is.
It's just like what we said earlier. If you check your microphones and do like an actual quick sound check.
Yep.
Everything that you just mentioned is all avoidable.
Right.
To some degree, anyway.
So the audio emergency is something that you created on your own, because if you were prepared, then you wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah.
Now, some of the biggest, what do you say is the failures that happen most often on Sundays? It's probably battery related, or maybe scheduling related.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100%.
Because, the guy that didn't get the message to show up and he's not there, or doesn't know what to play.
Sometimes even little things like, where are the microphones being stored at? And someone goes on stage to give the announcements and they can't find their microphone. And next thing you know, they're going and grabbing another microphone. Now a sound guy has to figure out, oh, that's in the wrong group, or has reverb applied to it, or whatever. Or, oh, he's on the female worship leader's mic, but she's leading the next song. So now there's going to be an awkward transition when he hands it back to her. And like all these little things, if we had gone through, and I guess systems is the word I'm looking for. Cause like, okay, the mic is always here. We always check it at, before service, make sure it's got batteries in it. It's already on. That's another thing too, is like learning how to turn on and off, a microphone. Some churches will have it to where it's locked on all the time, and the person using it, they don't have any control. They just have to put it in their mouth and the sound guy's turning up and down. But if you don't have that conversation, or if the last person turned it off before they put it back on the stand, then you're going to have an awkward moment where they're trying to figure out why it's not working and it's someone else's fault.
Moving on to a different topic, and something else very important that we want to discuss today is volunteers, burnout, and a healthy culture. And I wanted to plug in Ascension Worship at this point and the reason I want to do that is because when you have volunteers and they're burned out and there isn't a healthy culture, not only does Ascension Worship come in there and, help give training and do all that, they provide professionals to help that culture cultivate. And, they see the example of a professional go in there and they play bass guitar keys or go and sing, then they know what standard or what they're looking for moving forward. And I think someone that has worked with Ascension Worship in the past, myself, for at least 10 years, and then, continuing to work with Ascension Worship, helping these churches out. What makes volunteers feel more confident instead of being intimidated? I think I answered some of it, but I want you to answer that.
Well, so, and to clarify, for people who aren't familiar with Ascension, so Ascension does a lot of things. The Ascension Network is kind of like, for lack of a better term, like a temp agency for church sound guys, which is, what I do, but also worship leaders and musicians. So if you have like your drummer's getting married and he's going to go on his honeymoon and be gone for a couple of weeks, we help to provide.
No, we can't do that.
Yeah. But so we help to provide someone and like facilitate communications and all that. So I think one thing, and I don't do as much with the musical side of things anymore, but that's how I was involved with Ascension, was as a bass player when I first started. So one thing that I've learned is like, to make people confident, you have to give them everything they need to perform at the level that you want them to perform at. And so we use a tool called Planning Center, which is a scheduling tool. So one, it's not just hey, I texted Johnny, can you be here? And then he loses a text and forgets what week. Like, there's an actual app on your phone that says you're going to be at this church at this time. Here's the address.
Here's everybody else that's playing with you.
Exactly.
Yep.
But then there's resources you can put in that app. So, there's MP3 of the song, there's a chord chart, there's lyrics, if you're doing tracks, there's different tracks you can hear and all that kind of stuff. But you want to kind of spoon feed them like, hey, and then like, especially, some of these songs, there's like 30 versions of, Amazing Grace, for example. So like, don't just tell them, hey, we're singing Amazing Grace. Like, here is MP3 of the exact version we're doing. We might modify it a little bit on Sunday morning, but we're spoon feeding you exactly what we want so that there's no misconceptions about what we're going to get in the long run. And the more you can do that, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Why do you think some churches, excuse me, why do you think some churches unintentionally burn out volunteers?
Because, well, one, churches, by the nature of how we operate, we We try to use volunteers the most. We don't want to just spend money, even though the conception is that churches spend money on things they shouldn't. Some do. But that money is tithe money. People gave that to the church. So we have to be very careful with how we use it. So on a small scale, we're trying to be respectful of that money and not, overspend on things. But that comes at the cost of then using our resources that we have for free, which is our volunteers. And sometimes churches, because they're just struggling to get like a good service every week, will overemphasize things like, for example, like setting up and tearing down like extra staging, like that might be cool. What's the benefit of that versus how many volunteers it takes coming in at 4:30 in the morning to set that up? You know what I mean? And so you have to kind of balance that out and push, like working out. If you can lift 100 pounds, you should try to lift 110 pounds at some point. But if you go from 100 straight to 200, you're going to tear something and then you can't work out anymore. You see what I'm saying? So like if we overuse our volunteers, that's when we burn them out, and now they're not useful to themselves or to us anymore. So
what do you think improves church audio faster, better gear or a better culture?
I'd say, especially in these days, better culture, because even like a $2,500 digital mixer is way better than what we used to have back when everything was analog. Like you can continue to build your skills up for very cheap these days with entry level audio equipment. So you can always get your volunteers to do better and have a healthier culture and still work with that gear that is still miles above what we had just 10, 15 years ago.
I mean, analog mixers still work.
Yeah, they do.
They're not as fancy.
No.
But they still work. I kind of enjoyed going back and using them every once in a while.
The worst, though, is we've gotten, at least I have, so used to compression that every once in a while I'll mix a church that either has no compression or they got the one knob compressor. And I'm just so used to having a controlled sound that like it sticks out to you, and I don't know. I'm just a control freak, I guess.
What's one thing churches could do immediately that doesn't cost anything to improve their sound?
Well, YouTube. There's so much stuff on YouTube, like the resources that are out there. So we have a channel. It's a Essential Worship Tech Tuesday. You can find it on YouTube, if youtube.com/@AW Tech Tuesday. There's a ton of free resources on there. And then there's other guys like Drew Brashler is a really popular one, especially for church audio, where there's just so many great resources out there. Again, utilizing the equipment you already have, you can do a lot more with just some proper training.
So, hey, Chad, I want to thank you for coming by and being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time coming, and your world of knowledge is extraordinary. As well as, every audio tech should have their own audio tech. It's always good to run ideas across each other.
Yeah.
Chad is someone that I have worked with. He used to work at Guitar Center with me. We've known each other for a long time. And again, here we are at the topic of relationships and partners. Chad and I celebrate each other, our wins. And a lot of times we're celebrating together. I can't tell you endless times, time and time again, where I'm like, here, I have the system all designed for you, and I want you to meet Chad. And Chad just comes in and does what Chad does and makes everything better. And everybody, did you get that one call from that guy, by the way? It's just like, he's like, hey, who was that one guy that came and did this? I'm like, oh, that was Chad. And he's like, I need him again. So Chad is highly needed and sought after. People in this industry, especially in this city of Jacksonville, it's very niche. We all know each other. And if you do one person wrong or you do one person good, everybody knows about it. So I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart as your friend and your partner in business.
And can I, one more note on that as we wrap up here?
Sure.
One thing that I found is so important, talking about relationships and boundaries and all that kind of stuff and healthy culture. one thing that I've learned over the years, and I'm afforded this because I don't serve at any one church. I help with a bunch of churches. I think it's so important to develop friendships with people that are, if you're in the church world, or Christians, if you're in the business world, just cool people, but people that don't work at your church. You should be getting lunch with them and hanging out with them and talking to them as much as possible. Just because sometimes we get blinders up, and like there might be some boundaries that need to be implemented that are not. And like we, kind of like allow some things that we probably shouldn't. And if you try to talk to someone who also works at the same, industry or church or whatever, they might not give you good advice. But like you can come to me and say, hey, I don't like this thing that's happening here. And I'd be like, yeah, that's not good. And that needs to be addressed. And, here's how from an outside perspective, or vice versa. Maybe like, I've had some guys come to me where like, they're like thinking that they need to leave and they just need someone to talk to and be like, and I'll usually tell them like, hey, it's just Christmas. Like you're getting burned out because it's Christmas season. Like don't do anything rash until, we're through this season, and then we can kind of reevaluate. But just having friends that you can talk to and get real advice that aren't exactly a part of your organization, I think it's just so incredibly healthy.
I think a true friend would tell you to be in the fruit of God's spirit of gentleness.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to create some distance between the issue and yourself, and stepping back and, like you said, don't jump to conclusions. Evaluate, audio engineers like ourselves, we constantly evaluate, troubleshoot, not just the sound system, but our entire lives. It's kind of a catch-22 type of thing. We're problem solvers. We love doing it. So we hope we've solved some problems for you today. And if you like this content, please put comments down below, like, share, and we'll put Chad and Ascension Worship's information in the descriptions as well. Utilize these people; they're great. Once again, Chad, thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, peace.